Welcome back to Legends in the Dark, the podcast where we explore chilling tales and urban legends from around the world. Tonight, we're diving into a classic American horror story, a tale that's been whispered around campfires, told in hushed tones by friends, and etched into our collective nightmares. This is the story of the Hookman. It was a cool, quiet evening in a small, peaceful town. The kind of night where the stars gleamed brightly and the air carried the faint scent of blooming flowers. Sarah and Mark, a young couple in their late teens, had decided to spend the evening together. Mark, ever the romantic, suggested they drive out to Lover's Lane, a secluded spot on the edge of town, known for its privacy and picturesque views. Mark's father had let him borrow the family car, a sleek, well-kept sedan. The couple laughed and talked as they drove, their spirits light and carefree. When they arrived at the lane, Mark parked the car beneath a large oak tree, its sprawling branches forming a canopy above them. The two sat in the car, enjoying the stillness of the night and the soft music playing on the radio. "Isn't this perfect?" Mark asked, his hand resting lightly on Sarah's. Sarah smiled, but glanced uneasily at the dark woods surrounding them. She wasn't sure why, but something about the isolation made her uneasy. "I guess," she said softly, her voice carrying a note of hesitation. Mark chuckled. "Don't tell me you're scared. It's just us and the crickets out here." As if to mock his words, the music on the radio abruptly cut off, replaced by the monotone beeping of an emergency broadcast. "This is a special news bulletin," the announcer's voice crackled through the static. "Authorities have reported that a dangerous individual has escaped from the state asylum. The man is described as mentally unstable and armed. Residents are advised to stay indoors and report any suspicious activity immediately." Sarah's stomach churned as the announcer continued. "The suspect is said to have a distinctive feature, a hook in place of his right hand." The radio fell silent, leaving only the sound of crickets chirping and the faint rustle of leaves in the wind. Sarah sat bolt upright in her seat, her eyes wide with fear. "Mark," she said, her voice trembling, "we should go." Mark rolled his eyes, though a nervous laugh escaped his lips. "Come on, Sarah, it's just a coincidence. Besides, we're miles from the asylum." "Please," she insisted, "I have a really bad feeling about this." Seeing the fear in her eyes, Mark finally sighed and turned the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life, and the car rolled slowly down the gravel path, leading back to town. As they drove, the tension in the car began to ease. Mark made small jokes to lighten the mood, and Sarah started to relax, leaning back in her seat. The road was quiet, with only the occasional flicker of moonlight breaking through the trees. But then they heard it. Thump, thump, thump. The sound was faint but distinct, as if something was tapping against the car. Sarah froze, her breath catching in her throat. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. "It's probably just a branch," Mark replied, though his voice lacked conviction. The tapping continued, louder this time. Thump, thump. "Mark, stop the car!" Sarah shouted, her fear bubbling to the surface. Mark hesitated, then pulled over under the glow of a street lamp. The car came to a halt, and the tapping stopped. "What is it?" he asked, trying to mask his own unease. Sarah pointed to the passenger side window, her hand trembling. "There's something hanging on the door handle." Mark stepped out of the car, his heart pounding in his chest. He walked around to Sarah's side, squinting in the dim light. As he drew closer, he saw it. Dangling from the door handle was a long, rusted hook. It swayed gently in the breeze, the metal catching the faint light and gleaming ominously. Mark stumbled back, his mind racing. How had it gotten there? Had someone been watching them? "Get back in the car!" he shouted, his voice cracking with panic. He jumped into the driver's seat and slammed the door. Without a second thought, he floored the accelerator, the tires screeching as the car sped down the road. Sarah clutched her seatbelt, her knuckles white as she stared wide-eyed at Mark. When they finally reached Sarah's house, Mark parked the car, and they sat in stunned silence, trying to process what had happened. Do you think he was out there?" Sarah asked, her voice barely audible. Mark nodded grimly. "I don't know, but that hook didn't get there by itself." The next morning, they reported the incident to the police. Officers searched the area around Lover's Lane, but found no trace of the escaped convict. The hook, however, was kept as evidence, a chilling reminder of how close the couple had come to danger. The story of the Hookman became a legend in the small town, a cautionary tale told to teenagers about the perils of venturing into the unknown. And, though the escaped convict was never found, the memory of that rusted hook swinging from the car door would haunt Sarah and Mark for the rest of their lives. Because sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that could almost be true.